Noting the time at 7:30 in the presence of a quorum, I now call the Finance Committee to order. Do you want to?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Finance Committee members. My name is Tom Beejan. I'm your Assistant Town Manager, and I'm just going to provide a quick recap on what led us to tonight and introduce a few folks that are here with us. Corey York, the DPW Director, is here in attendance. Dean Schotter, the Chair of the DPW Building Committee. And then you see sitting in front of you, Larry Spang, Andrea Brew, and online joining tonight is Kate Bubrinsky. They're from Arrow Street Consultants. So, how did we get here tonight? If you recall, back at annual town meeting in May, town meeting voters approved an appropriation of $150,000 for future study and the review of plans for the new DPW building to date, and a peer review that would provide a couple alternatives on how to move forward. So in June, the Select Board directed the town manager to procure the services of a consultant who could provide that peer work and provide some alternatives after review of all the work that's been done. In July, the town procured the services of Arrow Street Consultants. Arrow Street is pretty unique to us as they've completed some facility reviews in the past and brought a different level of expertise to this project. So in August, Arrow Street hit the ground running. They began with interviews of different town staff who have been involved in the project to date, Weston and Sampson, the project designer, and PMA Associates, who is the OPM for the project. Throughout that process, Arrow Street was reviewing current design, all feasibility studies and reports that had been created, all the way back from 2013, I believe, up to 2024, and then coming up with alternatives to be presented to the DPW Building Committee. That occurred in August, preliminary presentation. Public feedback was given, a number of different discussions centered around some options that you'll see in this presentation, and Arrow Street then came back a few weeks ago to the DPW Committee with 5 really thorough alternatives for the town to consider. So at this time, I'd like to kick it over to Andrea, Larry, and Kate, who will lead you through this presentation and report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. For protocol, we should be pressing these as we're speaking. Is that the, okay, just checking that. And are you all able to see this screen? Perfect, okay. Well, thanks very much, we appreciate it. We have, as Tom had mentioned, spent a few months now, I guess it's been, looking through both what you've done to date as well as options we could come up with for proceeding. And so tonight we wanted to give you a little background on that, as well as walk you through the options we've developed. As Tom mentioned, we presented those a week or so ago to the DPW committee. And then next week we'll be presenting that to the Board of Select Board. So with that, Andrea's gonna walk us through the presentation.
Okay, hello everyone. So as it's been said, we've developed 5 options, and they're in sort of order of magnitude of cost and scope. So the first one we're calling the VEDD set, which is short for value engineering of the Weston and Sampson 40% DD set. We first took a look at the design and the drawings of that project and met with them to discuss some of their process. And so this option takes their design and sort of minimizes it, shrinks it. So it has the same program, but a little bit less area. And as you can see in the turquoise, which is labeled fleet storage, that we retained the size of that from the 40% because we knew that was a goal for the DPW to be able to store their 31 trucks or winter fleet. And then in terms of the other colors, that represents the DPW offices, administration, staff support, and maintenance shops. And in that case, we sort of regularized the footprint of the building, which helps to save money. You're not having as many ins and outs. And basically in that wing of the building, as I said, that program has been reduced slightly. And then just going forward, you can see the red diagonal slash building that represents a current DPW building. This is an enlargement of it. It does not include a wash station, which was part of the Weston and Sampson design. And option 2, then we took a step way back and said, well, how can we just work with the existing building? Is that doable? And we hired RSC engineers, structural engineers, and GGD mechanical engineers, and they did a site analysis of the existing structure as well as a study of the systems for each of the options. Regarding this building, we found that while it did have some problems structurally, and as well as with the envelope, it basically was an issue of trying to increase maintenance and reduce some of the damage that was happening because of trying to fit so many trucks in there. So a lot of the damage on the exterior was from impact with trucks hitting the CMU walls and cracking, and then water infiltrates it, and it just is sort of a domino effect. But we didn't, in our opinion, find it as bad as we originally expected. So in this option, it's basically everything remains as is, except it's renovated. We have in our estimate, new windows, insulation would be added, a new mechanical HVAC system. All these options that we're talking about tonight are based on an air-sourced heat pump system, all electric. So this option doesn't really meet the department's goals. It just sort of gets them through some more time until it absolutely has to happen. Option 3, we looked at then knowing that one of the primary goals of the department was to get their winter fleet. What if we took the Weston and Sampson fleet storage building, same size, and tore down half of the existing building and put it up against the existing building? This, you'll see when we get into the cost summaries, that this option works more or less programmatically, doesn't meet every need, but a severe disadvantage is the amount of structural changes that would need to happen and able to build against this, the existing building. And that's a close-up. Option 4A is a renovation of the existing building for the DPW offices and maintenance and workshops, and then builds a new fleet storage based on the Weston and Sampson design as a separate building. Advantages of this are that the fleet storage sort of shields the noises from the shops, from the neighborhood, so that was a plus. But I will get into more of the analysis later when we get to our charts. I also want to mention with option 4A that when you move the staff and the support and the maintenance space into the new building, you actually end up with more space than they need. So there's a little bit of potential for growth there. And the last option, 4B, is the reverse of 4A, where we renovate the existing building for fleet storage, and build a new building, and it's basically taking that same wing from the 40% DD, option 1, and putting it right on the site where you see it. In this option, you can see a dashed blue line, a big rectangle, so that would be the footprint of the right-sized fleet storage if there was an opportunity in the future to tear down the existing building and then replace it with a right-sized fleet storage. And you'll see here that this properly parked only fits about 18 trucks, and that's not enough. So what you're losing then is the storage for the rest of the fleet, which I'm not sure where that would go. And we learned that it's important to keep the trucks inside in the winter. One thing, it's better use for the trucks, easier to take care of. When there's a snowstorm, they don't have to get out and clean the snow off. It's ready to go in case of emergencies, among other reasons. So an option to this fleet storage renovation of the existing, we looked, and this alternate renovation use hasn't been priced, but it's a potential concept where you would add, you would add more garage doors that would enable you to park more trucks in, and this is showing the full 31 fleet of vehicles. You'd have trucks on each side with 4 garage doors at each end. This would need further study as it would require some structural analysis. So now we have a couple charts for comparisons, and on the left we have the baseline of the 40% DD set in yellow, and the cost, I believe, was around 37 million plus. You'll see here on the far upper right that it says 39,000. That's because in order to compare our options, which assume a construction start date of August 27, we had to add some escalation. And so to be fair to that estimate, we added that same escalation, assuming they would all start at the same time. Option 2 comes in at the lowest at 11,000. Sorry, 11 million, I wish. And I'll just continue because you'll see more information. This is sorry, it is small. Just a program. We looked at the program of each of the options and compared them with each other. We tried to start off with getting a 9 to 10% reduction of the option 1 of the 40% DD set. So option 1 is about 9 to 10% reduction in area of the gross square feet. Option 2 is what it is, and option 3 was a 25% reduction. Option 4A, 4%, which wasn't much because, as you remember, it had the existing building for the admin support, which was more space than they needed, and had the new full-size fleet storage building. And then option 4B has a good reduction, and you'll see how that helps to contribute to make it one of the more favorable options. Okay, this is really small. So the big picture here is that we have these categories that we scored, gave each of the options a score, 5 being the highest, the best, and down to 0 being it's not much of an improvement or not much value for the work. And so we have categories on the left of project cost, the program, how well each option meets the program, site issues, including parking. There was a goal of 40 parking spaces. Circulation, and that is in how you're circulating around the site in terms of trucks being able to get around the site, minimizing inefficiency, but also making it safe when there's the public visiting and parking in the public lot. And then the other issue of site was abutter impacts, trying to use some of the buildings to shield the noise from the department, from the road and the adjacent neighbors. And then the last topic is energy improvements. And where it says envelope, that's saying that new means that it's getting based on what was used in the Weston and Sampson design. New windows, triple glazed windows, fully insulated. Where it says replace, we'd be replacing the existing windows with triple glazed windows. And then there's EUI, which stands for Energy Use Index. And Kate will go into that in a little bit, but looking at the big picture for those that can't see it, the 40% DD set, we gave a score of 65, so it's all fives except for the cost, which is a 0, because we all know that doesn't work right now. And the lowest scoring option was option 2 with a score of 20, so 20 compared to 65. As a reminder, option 2 was renovating the existing building, bringing it up, doing some structural repairs, improving the envelope, a new mechanical system, accessibility upgrades, but it's not meeting at all the department's needs. So we felt it wasn't the best use of the money. I want to jump to this slide, which highlights the more viable options, option 1, 4A, and 4B. And Larry, feel free if you want to jump in. But so option 1 had a score of 62, option 4A has a score of 58, and option 4B has a score of 56. And I just want to say that these scores are, I don't want to say they're subjective, but there's, you could just tweak one part of it and it changes it. But given our analysis, the cost estimates, the studies we've done, and the interviews, we think that option 4B has the most promise. I'm going to have Kate jump in and talk about the EUI, the Energy Use Index.
Yeah, sure. You guys can hear me.
Yep. We're just turning it down because it's.
Hoping not a giant head screaming at you on the wall. So for energy, we specifically looked at, this is just a benchmarking study. We didn't do any energy models. We looked at the existing building EUI, and then we looked at the improvements for each of the options, whether it's the HVAC or the envelope improvements. We benchmarked, where you would get from a fully newly built, which would be your most efficient, and then the various options 2, 3, 4A, 4B in between. And that's how we kind of did that benchmarking study. In terms of the ranking for that, the lowest, most efficient ones, the lowest energy use, most efficient ones were on the high end. They got a 5, down to the renovation of the existing building, option 2, that has a 1, because while we are putting a new HVAC system in, which is a more efficient system, and we are able to do some envelope upgrades, it's still an existing building and we can only upgrade it and remove thermal bridges and things like that to a certain extent. You'll notice in 4A and 4B, the energy use are quite varied. The 4A is 1 and 4B is 4. That's because in 4A, the renovated portion, the renovated building, is the spaces, the workshops, the office space that use the most energy. The fleet storage doesn't use a ton of energy. There's some minimal, ventilation and conditioning happening there, but the most energy intensive component is in the existing building. So for that case, the existing building renovation is really quite similar to option 2 in that case, in terms of its energy use, and it actually would use slightly more energy than the existing building does today. And then in terms of 4B, that's got a 4, and that's because we're able to, that high energy intensity uses, the program that's highest energy is not the renovated building, it's a new building. And so therefore we can have the most optimized envelope and HVAC system. And so we can get the energy use down a lot more when those high energy spaces are the new construction and not the renovation. So that's the difference between those two. That is probably one of the more significant differences between those two options in terms of the energy side.
Yeah, I think that sort of concludes the presentation. I think as Andrea had mentioned, really trying to help understand where is the sort of sweet spot between the cost of the building and the facilities improvements. And we tried to do it a little systematically in the sense that option 1 is shrink the building slightly. Option 2, could you make the existing building work for what you have and improve it? And then option 3 was, well, what if we were to take off half the building? I think options 2 and 3, the renovate and the take off half the building, seem to us to be, A, not meet the needs of the department as we've understood them and sort of as expressed in the original proposal, as well as giving us a very tough building to renovate in the case of option 2, and then option 3, it becomes very expensive when you slice a building in half to try and then add to it. So option 4A and B gives us a little more robust approach to that and saying, okay, well, can we reduce the amount of new construction we're doing, renovate what you have, and in the process reduce the overall cost, but meet the needs of the department a little better. And as Kate was mentioning with the energy intensity, EUI, really option 4B, you're putting the people in the new building and keeping the old building for trucks. And to a certain extent, that felt a little stronger to us based on the needs of the department and the DPW as they were expressing their concerns about people working in substandard facilities, particularly the lack of strong separation between the vehicle areas and the current office areas, and the sort of indoor air quality leaking back and forth. So all of those were leading us to option 4B. And then when you look at the cost, does the cost come down enough that it becomes more tenable to the community? So trying to put it all in one big bundle, that's where we've ended up, and we're happy to take your input.
I want to thank you for the presentation, and I'm going to say a couple things, ask a couple questions, and I'll defer to my committee here. First off, I want to thank you for presenting scenarios. I feel that the taxpayers need to see scenarios presenting, whatever the size of the original project was. Let's say it was, this is not going to be accurate, but let's say it was 40 million. Presenting a $40 million option with no scenarios is, I think, a hard thing to chew on, especially in the way the economy is these days. And I have a lot of questions. I think my committee has a lot of questions. And I'd like you to just understand that we're asking questions as representatives of the taxpayers. And the taxpayers rejected this building by 58%, or this project, in town meeting. So I think as a committee and the select board, we've all agreed that we need a staffing solution for the staff. The hiccup, I think, came on the vehicle storage. So I'm going to phrase my questions in two pieces. I'm going to look at it as two problems, a staffing issue and a vehicle storage issue, because I think that there's a lot of agreement on the staffing and how that's resolved. And there's a lot of questions on the equipment. So in the original Weston and Sampson presentation, the space for staff was approximately doubled. It was too cramped, the size it was. They needed areas to collaborate, and it was like, went from like 4,000 to just under 9,000. I saw, if you could slide back to the tab where you have all the square feet for admin and staffing. And at the time, it was mentioned that if you were building a brand-new office building and you already had your staff, the first thing that you would do is you'd do a work study and you'd find out how many people are physically in desks and cubicles and how long they are. Because nobody builds office buildings if you have hybrid staff, or if you have some people that are, they only need a desk for an hour a day. You do what most companies do. You build you make a couple hotel spaces for the people that need office space. You give them office space. You build your collaboration spaces, and it wasn't clear on the original Weston and Sampson. It's not clear on this. If there is a cubicle for every staff member, I have a couple other questions, so I'll run through and then I'll just defer to you folks. So the question would be, really for the taxpayers, is that I think that when we're asking whether it's 11 million or 40 million for whichever is decided on the solution, we need to show the taxpayers that there is a legitimate need for physical space for people, because I think when you talk about these departments and people go to the facility, most of the people are flying around outside and they're all working hard, and it's hard to think that they all need cubicles or desks. But I know that there is legitimate need for that, so I just think that needs to be proven. And then the second thing is that if you're spending between 11 and $40 million, I think you can digitize all your documents. So we don't need to build space and have filing cabinets. I think that if you're spending that kind of money, if it's if it's 50 grand, it's 60 grand, digitize your documents and do that moving forward, so we're not building permanent space to store filing cabinets. Moving on to equipment, I have 4 quick things on that. The size of the building is directly dependent upon the vehicles that need to be stored in it. And there is a known but not defined exactly number of redundancy in the vehicles. There's also seasonality in the vehicles. We have general questions on whether the vehicles even need to be stored inside. And the other item is parking the vehicles diagonally actually takes up more space than parking them square in. And let's see, I have, parking diagonally, seasonal. Yeah, so those are the 4 things on the equipment and the vehicle storage. So I think regardless of what solution is presented to the town, we need to prove to them that the vehicles being used need to have the space, and not just count all the vehicles we have and say that we need a building for all of them, because we know there's redundancy. You can move redundant vehicles to other parts of the town, and when one breaks down, you can go get it. You don't have to store them all in the same location. If they're all being used, that's fine. We just have to, that's something that has to be proven, especially when you're asking for upwards of $40 million. And I feel like those pieces of fact will help support whatever scenario is concluded as the right scenario for the town and for the staff. But I feel the taxpayers need that information. in order to get behind whatever this is, because it's very easy to just question all the numbers when they're based on, just what we have today and everything. We just need more, we need something tangible, some tangible facts behind that. So I'll go back to you, then I'll let my committee respond.
So the first was about staffing, and I just want to point out, we did look closely at the program that was used for the Weston and Sampson design, and we reduced the area. I don't recall how much we reduced it, but we noticed there were, they had 2 kitchens, so we said maybe they could have 1 kitchen. Could that kitchen share the space with the muster break room as it does today? So that's what we're showing. The showers and bathroom facilities today are in pretty bad shape, do not meet code, and I don't even know how they can use them.
I was never questioning the kitchens, the showers. My question is specifically around the space built for cubicles. I think that's the only question on the staffing. If they need showers, they need a kitchen,
Yeah.
that's not a question.
So
They need a
the-
collaboration room, that's not a question.
The staff workspace is pretty minimal. I didn't really reduce that because I didn't see a way to reduce it any further in terms of the workspace for the staff.
But the question is, do we know that, I don't know, let's say there's 9 cubicles. Is there someone sitting at 9 cubicles 40 hours a week?
Yeah, I would jump in and say, that's probably the next layer of study to look at. In other
Right, but
words,
if we're approving a design and we go to town meeting and we get funding to approve this, it could change the size of the building.
sure. No,
That's
I
my
agree.
point.
I agree with you on that.
So it's easier to find that now, get that fact now, to validate whatever goes to town meeting to get approved to be further spent on and designed out. And it's this easy fact to get. That's really kind of what I'm getting at.
Okay, because I think where we were coming at it from was these are strategies to reduce the size of the building and the project and the budget. And that additional work would go into them as they develop and you say, okay, we want to go with one of the options or a combination of options. And then the next round of studies, you would then look at them more closely because there's a lot of, this was a very quick study and a little more high level. So yes, I would agree that you could look and say, okay, do you need 9 cubicles? Could it be 8? Could it be 6? I don't know the answer to those.
I think with the staffing, I don't want to be in a position to tell the team what they need for kitchens, showers, and all those things. I think the only thing that logically can be asked a question on is built cubicles and whether they're building space for filing cabinets. That, to me, is the most logical thing to ask the
Yeah,
question
I mean,
on.
I did reduce area for file storage. The green area is it's not staffing, it's not people, well, it is people. But the green area in here are the 2 workshops, and the original design had 2 stairs to go up to 2 separate mezzanines. So we're proposing 1 stair and a shared mezzanine. So there's a lot of assumptions made within this building, within this footprint. There's a lot of things that could be reduced further, or maybe the workshop, in the future design of this, the workshop may need to get bigger and then the staffing area gets smaller. So that all would happen in another phase. This is sort of a big picture look of how we can get the cost down. How it's filled in specifically is another round, another analysis that would happen in design.
Maybe we should go to the area tabulation.
Sure. Okay, let me see if I can. So admin area, you can see the cursor here. In the 40% DD set, it was 4,600, and it dropped to about 3,700. And that's for the workstation area. So however many workstations they want to fit in there, we're saying that's the area that we think could work for what was proposed.
Yeah, not just vaguely remembering, I think that the original, I think what they have now is close to 5. So option 2, reno existing, would not even, I don't think that would help their space at all. Like combining the two together.
Sorry? I didn't hear what you...
Option 2
Yep.
is 5,300 square feet, admin and support staff. I think right now they have like 4,800.
Okay,
You go down 2 lines.
Yeah, it could be a combination of how we're defining the staff support versus the admin
Okay.
area.
All right. We can move on to the equipment questions.
Okay. Let me go back to that picture. I mean, anyone would do, but in terms of so we were given a list of the winter vehicles. There are 31, there's a lot more vehicles. I don't know that it was our task to figure out redundancy, so that would need to be something looked at, I guess. The diagonal parking is the safest way to park the vehicles. It's the safest way and it's the most expedient way. When they're having emergencies and they need to get out, I think every second counts, so. That's what we recommend. Of course, the 4B option is trying to make use of that existing building. And, you know, we had concerns about continuing to park the trucks in there the way they do because of the damage to the building. And if you were to continue to do that in a renovated building or a new building, you're going to end up with the same issues.
Does anybody else have any questions? No. Start with Steve. Let's go down this. We'll go to Greg last, though.
Did you want to? Okay. Okay, so the first question, since this is the Finance Committee, did you stay within the 150,000? That was the amount town meeting approved for the study.
Oh, for our piece?
Yes.
I think we were well below 150 is my recollection.
Actually, much less than that,
Yeah.
less than half of that.
Well then, very good.
Sorry, you're asking me to remember a number from a while ago.
You should remember that number.
Yep, fair enough.
During the debate and vote about this, it was more than space, okay? A lot of the, I won't say argument, a lot of the differences of opinion came on safety and health issues. There had been many, you've probably read all the historic studies, they all raise the same questions. Can you say that all 5 of these options address the safety and health issues? Maybe not in the same manner, but that we'd not violation any codes or any.
Yeah, I think if we go to option 2 for a minute, I mean, even if you were to renovate the existing building, I think there are ways that you could improve the air quality that's going back and forth between the different spaces. A lot of that has to do with separation of spaces, fixing leaking walls, fixing HVAC systems. If you replace the entire HVAC system and you pick up fresh air in different places and drop it into the office spaces and you sort of positive pressure them so that any leakage that does happen is going outbound instead of inbound, I think even that one you could improve what's there. To the extent that you're doing new buildings, those are easier to control, and particularly these days with all the requirements of the new stretch energy code. To seal off the new buildings is, part and parcel of what we're doing these days. To retrofit that onto the old buildings is harder to do and just raises the cost incrementally every time you do that. But I think wholesale you can do that. I think the separation between options 4A and B sort of highlights 4A, and if you go to that one for a minute, says, okay, we're going to keep the existing building, we're going to reuse that for people, and we're going to build a new building, and that's going to be for the fleet storage. And so, that sort of puts one priority ahead. What ends up happening here, it's harder to phase. You'd want to somehow either get everybody out of the building, so you could renovate the whole thing, or do it in phases, which increases your costs and complexity. 4B, we looked at and said, okay, well, what if you reuse the existing building for the fleet storage and use that as best you can, and then build a new building for the people who are working there and the maintenance equipment. And that's where your priorities are. And so that really separates, in our minds, 4A and B.
But to my original question, all 5 options could at least meet code in terms of safety and health.
Yeah, all options assume,
I get that some are better than others.
okay, yeah. I mean, the safety issues and health issues were just starting site-wide, separating the public from the workspace and making that safe for the public when they visit, but also making safe place for the workers from the public. We heard stories about some unhappy customers coming in. There's also separation in parking between visitors and staff and the vehicles, the fleet trucks traveling in and out of the building around the site, so those were considerations. And then I mentioned accessibility, and Larry spoke a little about the health with a new ventilation system, and all the buildings insulated, making them comfortable and safe, healthy places to work.
My second question, and this is the Finance Committee, so we love to quibble about numbers. On the option scores, as I do the quick math in my head, there's just possible 75 points available. And my calculation is that you assign 40 of those points simply to area, whether overall area or fleet storage area or staff support area. So my premise would be your analysis is skewed in favor of square footage. Or in this committee, we would probably assign more points to cost than anything else. So I'm not saying your analysis is flawed. I'm just saying different people would look at this and maybe cull out different options.
Sure, and one of the things we often do with our clients is run through the scoring matrix, as this is called, before you have any options up. Say, okay, what is the priorities of the community and how does that then impact the score? But moving as quickly as we have from August to today and trying to put some measurements against it. This was our best guess. We are happy to rerun numbers if other folks have different ideas of what an appropriate matrix is.
I mean, I think this committee has argued about vehicle storage space and how much is required. We've argued about cost overall. So yeah, this to me was, it just jumped off the page at me and said, oh, well, that's not reflecting my view of how we should evaluate this thing. And in the end, the cost number is significant. It's the number that defeated the proposal before. And we have to provide a lot of weight to it if we're going to move forward with anything. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for the presentation. If you bring up this, the building design of 4B, I just have a question in regards to that. On the existing structure, which is where the trucks are, can there be doors put in the sides of the building so that you don't have just the 4 on the ends, but you have ones on the sides so the trucks can just go out? You know, I've often wondered by looking at the building when I drive by today, why isn't there doors been put on the side? And maybe the building can't, the structure now can't support that, but to me, if they're hitting the building, backing into it or hitting it, if you have a door there and they can go right through a door, they can go right out, you know? I mean, it doesn't have to be that you have to have one for every single truck, but you could have 2 or 4 doors on the sides in addition to one on each end, and that way, come in, turn, or whatever, hope they stack them in there, so just a thought.
Sure, yeah, and I think one thing to mention on this is, so the existing building is a series of concrete block wall with joists that span across, and the wall down the middle is a bearing wall, so it essentially spans 2 different ways. What the structural code requirements are is that when you start to do major changes to the load-bearing and lateral resistance systems of the building, in this case, the concrete block walls, you have to replace it to meet the new code. So to a certain extent, you're grandfathered in by using minimally the openings you have today. To the extent in this next, if we go to the next slide, where we start to basically create more openings in the existing block wall, we have to put in steel reinforcing to keep that wall from racking and the whole building from racking. And so to the extent that we do that, the cost to renovate this building gets higher and higher, and at some point you start to say, well, why are we doing that? Why aren't we just building new? But that's often the case that's a little hard to follow because it's tied into the structural code or the structural renovation codes. And certainly the seismic lateral force requirements in today's construction are much more than when this building was built, whenever that was, 40, 50, 60 years ago.
Were you also asking about moving doors to the north and south sides of the building, or just?
I was thinking on the sides now that are just brick wall, you know, didn't think of the building racking or anything
Okay.
like that at that point. You know, obviously we're in finance, right? It's what's the cost, right? And, you know, it's putting money into a project, but if the project, you put money into something, you spend a lot of money, and it's only gonna get us 5 years down the road, well, it's not worth doing it at that point, because you spend a lot of money, and then 5 years, you're back in the same boat again. So that, they know that's some of the other concerns as well. Is it gonna meet the needs now and in the future? And what is the cost of it? I mean, that's, obviously, when you're going to ask your citizens for money, cost is a big item, and the
Sure.
last one overwhelmingly got, you know, did not pass because of costs.
I think one thing that we noted here is that to the extent you wanted to phase the project, you can build part of it and then renovate the existing building for fleet storage, stuff as many trucks in there as you can get. And then someday down the road, replace that with something that's more custom built for that use. To your point, that's sort of postponing till tomorrow what you may think you need today, and to a certain extent increasing the cost, because to build that new storage building today would be less dollars, absolute dollars, than it would be in 10 years. And oftentimes people say, well, you know, we just put a lot of money in there. Why 5 or 10 years later are we having to look at it again? So I appreciate that, but this one does give you the option to phase it if that were a strategy the town was interested in.
Thank you.
To follow on to sort of take it to the next step from what Roland just said, what is the expected useful lifespan of just the straight reno? I think that's your option 2. Does it buy us 50 years? Does it buy us 20 years? During the first meeting in August, it was stated that the current building as it is now, with all of its warts and whatnot, has a 10 to 15-year usable lifespan. In fact, she said, don't quote her on it, she needed 10 years, and then she followed up not 3 minutes later by saying 10 to 15 years. So, by renovating it, do we buy ourselves another 30 years, 50 years, 10 years?
That's always a tricky question, because you're essentially renovating pieces of the building as you go. And then to the extent that you're getting more fundamental wear and tear, which I would say is related to the structural system, either the concrete block, really because of its exposure to the weather, starts to really deteriorate, and you're finding that you're spending more money to replace it than you would otherwise. So a little hard to say. I know in the sort of typical work we're doing, you want to get 50 years out of a building. That's sort of the expected lifespan. The new school we did with you guys, the MSBA says 50 years. To the extent you're using less expensive materials to try and bring down the costs, typically a lot of these DPW buildings are built out of metal skin. And to a certain extent, the metal skin does not last as long as brick and concrete. And so that begins to wear sooner, and so you might say that's a 20-year building, 20-year skin in places. So it's a little hard to predict when you would say, well, this existing DPW building can no longer function. But I think saying it's probably 15 years, plus or minus, is not a bad place to put it.
Well, it seems like if we already have a 10 to 15-year lifespan, then it's not worth doing anything. I would like to echo what Scott said about giving us scenarios. Having scenarios is a very good thing. But it also seems to me that we need to take a step back. We needed to have taken a step back and done an even broader approach of scenarios. My understanding is that Arrow Street was given the task, and this is through no fault of your own, Arrow Street was given the task of trying to meet the programmatic desires and goals from the original plan. I would say that was probably too limiting. I would have liked us to take a much farther step back and make sure that what we're building is truly of need. For example, I still call into question needing to have 4 mechanical bays. Did we, and I know you haven't because you weren't supposed to, it wasn't your task. I'm blaming more us than you on this one. Have we done a good enough investigation about having a service contract? What about pooling with other towns around us? Do we really need to have 4 brand-new mechanical bays? I'm sure it'd be great to have. These are wonderful things to have, but are they mandatory? Similarly, do we have 31 people who are driving trucks, or are they contractors? Where did that 31 number come from? And what are the metrics of how frequently we use 31 vehicles in a day? Again, this was not within what you were asked to investigate, but this is the type of information that we need to be able to go back to the taxpayers and say, $30 million is the cheapest we can possibly get away with. Some of these underlying assumptions needed to have been reevaluated from the beginning, and it's not on your head because you weren't tasked to do it. But I can't swallow a $30 million project. I just can't do it. I do want to say that the spirit of option 4B is most in keeping with what we have said we wanted to achieve. We definitely wanted to focus on the health and safety issues. We concur that the shower, bathroom, break room facilities are unacceptable. We concur on that. We want to encourage that. But at the same time, we don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good here. It still feels like this is a laundry list of wants. I still haven't been given a satisfactory answer to me, and maybe I'm a curmudgeon and there will never be a satisfactory answer, but I don't understand 31 trucks. I don't understand four mechanical bays. You just said you needed 40 parking spots? In all the times that I've been in the DBW building, and fortunately, it's only been a handful of them, 2 of them have been site walkthroughs, there's no need for 40 cars. So where did that number come from? So I'm not seeing, I'm sure you did what you were asked to do, but I'm not sure the charge that was given to you was accurate. And I cannot get on board with a $30 million project. I just can't do it. Okay. Lifespan 41, yeah, okay. So a lot of those questions are for the DPW director and for the town manager and assistant town manager, but again, I'm trying to give you, if I'm supposed to stand up now and endorse a $30 million project, my questions have not been answered, and I do not believe we've done our due diligence in putting forward the best project that we can for the town.
Just to add on another option that we've talked about is like separating the space, like office spaces to some other place in the town and using this this area, maybe renovating the current area for the fleet storage and then repurposing it, maybe another property or something along those lines, just as a, to build on your idea, something else we've tossed around as like, if we're going to pull back, look, open up the aperture before we make a decision here. So one thing on the, going back to the scores, sort of operation and maintenance costs, and I think we perhaps touched a little bit on it with the question on how long does this last? Like what type of skin do we use? Are we gonna have to look at this? But a couple specific questions there, like in the EUI analysis, like how does that translate into sort of the energy costs and things like that? And can you give us some color on what the annual maintenance or operating costs are for the different options here? Is it right to assume that option 2 is going to be higher than the others? I'll pause there.
Kate, you want to jump on that one?
Yeah, so we didn't do operation and maintenance costing. That is something that we can do. We provided just recently a proposal to do that as sort of a next step. Generally speaking, all of the options will use less energy than the existing building, except for option 4A, which will use a little bit more energy than the existing building. In terms of cost, we didn't do that assessment, but these are electrifying systems where the existing building is primarily gas and the usage is mostly gas. So on some of the options, like the option 1 that will achieve the lowest energy use, will probably, they're all bigger, right? So we talked about square footage a lot. Their existing building is about 19,000 square feet, and these buildings are anywhere from twice that size or a little bit less than twice that size. So they will all cost more to operate, even with the efficiency of that system, just based on the amount of additional square footage. I can't give you an order of magnitude of what that would be, but it's a combination of a more expensive utility, which is electricity costs more than gas, although the town does purchase and have solar arrays that covers primarily most of the energy use, and more solar could be produced to cover the offset there, but without any renewables factored in, just the straight energy cost. The increase in the square footage is going to be offset, increase in the square footage is going to offset the efficiency of the system, and most likely the utility cost will be more expensive for those options, primarily all of the options except for option 2, because we're not increasing any square footage and we're just getting efficiency of systems there. But the other ones will either sort of balance out or potentially be a little bit more. in terms of utility cost.
Okay, and then how about sort of just the ongoing maintenance of the building and everything?
They would all be very similar.
Okay.
Because again, they're all the same HVAC system, so replacement cost. The smaller the building, you might have less units, right? So less pieces of equipment. So there's differentiation in cost there, but they're all the same system. And so they would need the same maintenance and the same replacement. The units will last anywhere from 15 to 20 years, depending on which component of the system it is. So all of that would be essentially the same across the systems because there's no differentiation of system.
I have a couple more questions, but if you want to pile on here.
I do, I want to just pile on right here on this specific point. It was raised in the meeting of September 24th, both by Selectwoman Nickel and by the member of the public, asking for a compare and contrast of these different options. Metrics that I'd be looking for are things like expected lifespan, relative operating costs versus upfront capital equipment, where the break-even point is. Larry, you're fully aware of this because this is exactly what we did on the school side. We needed to know the break-even point for each of the triple net zero, quadruples net zero components. We needed to know exactly where those break-even points were in number of years. I know that Selectwoman Nickel asked that question. It was right after you guys hung up, but I'm sure that was sent to you. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to pile on because it was exactly what you were just discussing.
Yep, understood. So I guess then on to, I'm curious, like what your process is going forward here, and like, are there ways to give some of that type of analysis? Also, like, what do you typically see at other, and for other clients? What percent, like as an example, like what percentage of these fleet storage facilities are sort of back in, like what we currently have or what you have in 4B versus the angled in, like, are there, I feel like that would be super helpful information for us to, leveraging probably your breadth of knowledge among different clients to help point us in the right direction.
Sure. To answer your first question, essentially we're wrapping up the scope of work that we've been asked to do. As Kate mentioned, we have a sort of optional to do a more detailed life cycle cost analysis, which the town may decide to undertake or not, and we're open to that. We've given a proposal for that. I would say, we understood the assignment to be looking at, are there other ways of looking at this building and reducing the cost of it while maintaining many of the program elements that we've understood to be part of the DPW's needs. And I would agree with you, we haven't spent a lot of time with the DPW trying to wring out all the nuances of their operations to decide if something does seem unnecessarily extravagant. But again, this was, our understanding was this was trying to develop a strategy that then would lead to a series of more studies. And agree with you that oftentimes you're looking more specifically at the operations of the department, and to your point, are there better ways of doing things? Are there different ways of doing things than we've traditionally done? And does that result in less building? Because that's really what we're trying to accomplish cost-wise. Reducing the amount of square feet is where the real savings are. Yep. So to the extent the project continues, that could be done. I'm not sure we're necessarily experts with how DPWs operate themselves and whether 4 bays is right or 3 bays is right or 2 bays is right. But oftentimes we're the ones asking the questions, and they're the ones who are thinking about, okay, well, what's their throughput on that kind of operation? How often are they doing it? What's the needs? If that person is in there doing that work, they're not in there needing a desk. And can you eliminate desks and those kind of things? So,
And it depends on the town too. If it's, I mean, this is a more rural area with a lot more trees compared to a more urban area, so it varies.
Okay, can I jump in for just 2 seconds before we go to Corinne? Just because you two may not be aware, and Kate on the phone, the Select Board and the Finance Committee are going to get together and go through these scenarios and other scenarios that don't need this type of analysis, simply to just document kind of a pro-con SWOT analysis on the options, because as you can see, there's a lot of different other ideas, and the goal is to just document for the town all potential ideas, including opinions on the scenarios that you presented that needed the analysis that you did in order to be even discussed. And other scenarios, for example, doing nothing, which I think everybody agrees is not an option, but it is a scenario. It's an option. And just to lay out the pros and cons of each option so that we can bookmark that meeting, and then when we have an idea what our finances allow and what we can afford and what is reasonable for the numbers, because we're dealing with some issues with health insurance at the moment that are driving budgets, projected budgets way up, we can reference that meeting and then circle scenario that we all agree on, and then people can see the pro and con discussion on it, and we can move on to other items, which I think everybody would like to do. So, Corinne.
Most of the questions I had have been answered. That's what happens when I'm sitting at the end, which is fine. I have a couple of questions about option 2, though. How many vehicles are parked in the current building? So it's a lot. Oh, Tom's going to tell us, I think.
Hi there, thanks for the question. Right now, safely, there's 12 in the current facility.
I feel like I've been in there and there's a lot more.
There's smaller equipment that's stored in there.
Oh, okay, so it cycles through depending on the season or something, you're telling me?
Correct.
Okay. That's what I was wondering was why, like, I've seen a lot more vehicles in there, but it says 12 under option 2. That's why I was wondering. And then we were talking about with this renovation, like I said, all of these options would meet code and provide safe and healthy working conditions, and that includes like facilities for women and no lockers and splash zones, right? So.
sorry, the last lockers in splash
There's
zones?
a picture that's been widely circulated that's in a splash zone of a urinal, basically.
Oh.
So but all this stuff gets cleaned up under option 2.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
any construction you do has to meet code.
Right. I just wasn't sure what code means, I guess. Like, does it mean there are separate women's facility, that there's facilities for
Yes.
everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
This option 2 plan here has the men's shower room and lockers and a separate women's.
Okay,
It's not as big, but
That's
it's.
fine, yeah.
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
I actually have a quick question to follow on the discussion of the life of the building under number 2. So under 4B, what would be the life of the building, the renovated part of the building for the vehicle storage? Do we have an estimate? Would that just be also about 15 years?
It's a really good question. What I'm thinking about is, to the extent, sorry, can you go to 4B? So one of the things, so the existing building is very poorly insulated, if at all. And to the extent that you're on the outside of the building, you're having the temperature swing up and down, and the inside of the building, you're trying to keep it around 65 to 70 degrees. That puts a certain stress on the wall system. To the extent that the fleet storage is more of a it really doesn't, it's not trying to keep people comfortable inside, to the extent it's holding vehicles and it's keeping them warmer than outside. So your load on that is a lot less. So the question for me is, okay, so does that give you a longer lifespan because you're not having that sort of requirement on the envelope of the building? And as an architect, it's a really hard thing to point at and say, oh yeah, it's gonna last 20 years versus 15, and it's a little hard to say that. What you'd wanna also do is look at, and again, the bearing walls are supporting roof steel, and to the extent that those connections are solid and maintained, and to the extent that you're fixing those to get longer lifespan is increasing the cost of the renovation. So I'm sorry, I'm giving you a very complicated answer to what it seems like a simple question, and it's a little hard to speak to.
I think there was a comment earlier that the use of renovating the building and continuing to use it intensively will cause wear and tear, right? It won't last for as long as, a new building. I'm just wondering if the same holds true if we only use it for fleet storage, and then we're back where we started, that it only has 10 to 15 years left on it.
Yeah, and I was just, sorry, I'm trying to think of if you have people in the building and it's fully heated and cooled versus, oh, it's just a fleet storage building and it's more like a barn. And that's the part I'm wrestling with and trying to figure out how I would say that increases. It feels like it would increase your longevity of that building. It's just a question of how much.
I would look at it another way, that if you don't do anything to it, it won't last as long.
Hi. This is, I guess, our third meeting, but it's our first face-to-face, so it's good to meet you. And I want to echo what Scott said. Thank you for coming up with options. It really helps synthesize the debate. So instead of a lot of free-floating different ideas, they sort of attach themselves to hopefully one of your options. However, one of the things that I just noticed is a pattern. And it's not a good pattern or a bad pattern, it's just a pattern. We've got the low-cost option at 11 million. And then everything else moves up to 28.3, 29.7, 33.8, 34.4. They tend to cluster at the higher level. So spotting the pattern, I guess my question is what would the, $20 million, what's missing? There's a really wide gap between the low cost and the next lowest cost. And the reason I bring that up is that one of the things that we have to balance, and it's not just the finance committee, it's also the select board, and it's tomorrow night, the DPW building committee will discuss this, and at some point, town meeting is going to be asked to vote again, and voters will be asked to vote again at some point down the line. People are going to want to know, you narrowed in on, quote, one of these options. How did you get there? Why that one? And so I guess my question is, it seems like there is a missing horse or a missing lane in this race. And again, it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just we're trying to thread a needle here and find something that is viable, but also is a lower cost. That seems to be what the town meeting said they wanted. In fact, they basically voted saying, I want to improve the facility and working conditions, but the cost was too high. That was the difference between people who voted yes and people who voted no. So that's the tension we have to deal with, and that's the, if we can find a middle ground, that would be nice. Second, I may have been laboring under a misimpression, so correct me if I'm wrong. I assumed that tomorrow night, the DPW Building Committee was going to vote on one of these 5 options and make a recommendation to the Select Board before their meeting next week. And if that's the case, I have 20 questions, and I'm not going to ask them right now, but I will email them to you. But they all fall into 6 categories, so there's like 3 or 4 questions per category. And they deal with functionality and operational viability and cost and life cycle trade-offs and energy performance and sustainability and planning, disruption, construction, future flexibility and expansion, and decision-making synthesis. And maybe you don't answer all of these, but if I had to vote tomorrow on one option, that's a lot of homework to do in 24 hours, but okay. If we have more time, wouldn't that be nice? Which gets to the process question. And let me be blunt, because it's probably a good time to do that. We could take this to town meeting again, we could take this to the voters again, and fail again, and learn that, oh, we didn't thread the needle correctly. And we could take it to the voters a year after that and fail again. And maybe they'll still have the appetite to listen to us by the time we get to the 3rd or 4th iteration. Maybe. I think what you're hearing from the Finance Committee is it's not just we have lots of questions, it's the town. The town has lots of questions. And it would be a lot better if the Finance Committee and the Select Board and the DPW Building Committee basically were in agreement. Yeah, this is a compromise. Nope, I didn't get everything I wanted, but you know what? This is time to move on to other things. We got other bigger issues that we're gonna have to wrestle with. The DPW building, let's agree on this. I don't know how we're gonna get from here to there quickly, but I'll tell you, it would be a much better outcome for all of us if we took a couple weeks and had the meetings that we were planning to have, and then resolve all of that before trying to meet some quick deadline that I still don't understand if it's actually there. I may have just imagined it. Or if we need it to do other planning for other issues. So I'll email this stuff to you tonight. I'll email it to the DPW Building Committee because this is a public meeting and I think I can do that. I haven't shared it with any of you because of the open meeting law. So you guys can see if I missed something. Many of your questions are on this list, so that's one of the reasons why I didn't go first. You know, who wants to hear me ask 20 questions? But, oh, there are a few people there. Okay, never mind. I hadn't, all right. 1 or 2 in the back, they want to know. You'll get the questions. But yeah, it would be nice to put the DPW building behind us. No, not yet.
All right, thank you, Greg. Thank you very much. I appreciate you staying a little bit longer than you originally intended, and answering questions from us. I'm going to have public comments. I don't know if I have public comments at all, but if we have any, you're welcome to stay for that. If not, then I think we're good. Thank you very much for appreciate everything.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you, it's nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I did have-
Name and name
John
and address.
Urich, Long Ridge Road. Couple things I was looking at. I really appreciate what you were saying, first of all, about where that gap in the middle, because one thing I was wondering was a survey done of what the public would actually approve? And if we don't know what's going to approve, when we do proposals for work, the first thing we do is pursue, don't pursue. And if we don't think we can be on budget, we don't even waste our time on the proposal. So
Sorry, John. Can you stop sharing? Can you stop sharing? Someone's sharing. Oh, okay. Okay.
So I do think we definitely need to have an idea of what the public will vote for and make a decision based off of that. A couple things I was looking at on option 4B, and I was thinking about this requirement to fit 31 trucks in there. And if that requirement is really only for inclement weather, snowstorms coming in, we want to get all the trucks inside so we don't have to clear them off. Trucks are only 8.5 feet wide. Anything beyond that's considered a wide load by DOT. So by my math, quick math, if you look at the 4B option, in the aisleways there, you can fit another 16 trucks. That gets you 34 trucks in that building. You then also have 4 maintenance bays, which if trucks are in them, they don't need parking spaces. If trucks aren't in them and you're parking for inclement weather, you can park trucks in them. So that really gets us, for option 4B, an inclement weather parking capability of 38 trucks, which in my mind would probably be more than we would need for a long time, especially if it's only for inclement weather. Again, looking at the supplement to 4B, which really should almost be a 4C, you list the trucks as 10 feet wide. Trucks aren't 10 feet wide, they're only 8.5. The one question I had was on the heat pump stuff also. If that's going to be used in the areas with the garage doors, I know that with the new school, when we've rented the school for facility, for events, they always say, keep the doors closed, keep the doors closed, keep the doors closed. The heat pump can't keep up once the doors are left open, and it takes a week to recover. Now, maybe a week is kind of high, but if we're going to have doors that are open for 2 hours a day that you're trying to heat with a heat pump, it may never keep up. So I definitely think that is something that needs to be looked at. The other thing, too, in terms of the office space, I'm assuming that the shower areas, which are completely appropriate to have, we're talking about locker rooms essentially for both. My office, we have showers. They're individual unisex showers. You go in, you take a shower, you get dressed, you get out. You don't need 2 full locker rooms. We have 2 rooms that would fit into less than this space here. We could probably fit 4 in this space here of individual showers. You go in, you shower, you get out. It's not a locker room, it's a shower room, and that's it. That may be a way that we can look at saving square footage on stuff like that, and just keep it simpler. And I think that's all I had for notes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your point about not building for the worst-case scenario, having a spot for everything at once is well taken. So thank you.
Is that end the public comments? Anybody, since we had this on? All right, give me 1 second and we'll move on. Oh, I'm under, sorry. F5. Sorry. Did that work? There we go. All right. Before I get into the point of view, we have a requirement to get our thoughts together for the multi-board AB Forward gathering. And the town manager is providing some information about Acton and we're getting information from Boxborough. And my question to the Finance Committee is what Finance Committee message would we want to present in this meeting and circulate? I'm past the circulation deadline, which was today at noon. But what I grabbed in here, let's see. We have it on the agenda, hang on. Let me get through, that's the whole deck. Let's see. So one of the things, like I think about, like all the paths that the school can take between now and by the time they figure out all their numbers. And then I think about what we heard at the last override. And there was a contingent in the town that was bringing forward a lot of points about school enrollment going down. I know recently, I think the school rating declined, at least in the niche. That's how I went down to 17 in niche.
It's based on what I've seen in niche, a year ago, it was a higher number, and now it's a lower number, and you want to get closer to 1. But I can double check that in
All
real
right.
time here.
Well, regardless of whether that's that point, we have stated as a finance committee that our belief is that there's financial value in the school rating. And so there's that data point. There is other data points, and I don't know, the way I was thinking about it is I almost think that it might be beneficial to have all these points presented so that they can be dealt with up front, so that there can be answers made to them, instead of, everybody agreeing on an agenda and then going out 4 or 5 months and then coming back to these same arguments. I guess that just kind of, so what I grabbed, I found this, I was trying to find school rating information, school ranking information. There's a website, School Digger, that I'm presenting here, and this has all the school, left-hand corner is the student population, bottom left is school rank, bottom right is the cost per student, and it varied by the elementary school, so I was just thinking that. And upper right-hand corner is the average standard score. The one thing that jumped out on this when I was looking at it is, why is the cost, does anybody know why the cost per student hasn't changed since 2015? It seems like that would be a number that would change. Is there a reason for that? Anybody know?
What is the source of the data for this site? Are you sure that they're using good numbers?
I'm referencing the site because I don't, there isn't anything, there wasn't anything really easy to grab. This site happened to have a lot of stuff, and it was referenced when I did a ChatGPT search. Greg?
Yeah, so I happen to have written a story about this for the Acton Exchange in January, and in January, Acton ranked number 13 for the best suburbs with the best public schools in Massachusetts with an A+. I just looked at the site right now, and we now rank number 9 with an A+ rating. So we've actually improved our school rankings by 4 in 6 months.
Can you email me the source of that?
Sure. And this group is based out of Pittsburgh. They're using, public data too. So, but they document their sources, so you can drill down in and see where they get their data from.
It's niche, is that?
Niche, N-I-C-H-E.
If you need to get more granular numbers on the per pupil cost, I don't know if you get it per elementary school, but you can definitely get the per pupil cost in the budget book from the school. And I've got the last 10 years budget books if you want me to look it up.
All right, so the question is, between with school data and then we have, the trend of the teachers with enrollment, do we have a thought on what our message as a finance committee should be to this multi-board meeting that we think would be productive and helpful? I'm just, I never just like saying yes to everybody else's thoughts, and because I feel like we're not having a dialogue about something. I feel like we should be presenting something or saying something collectively as a group that's going to be helpful to this process of AB forward, so that they have a better, conclusion and better, final presentation to the town. And I feel like this would be a way we could be helpful, but I'm looking for everybody's thoughts on what we think is best.
I agree. I think as we've talked about school rankings, I think that's something to keep an eye on. As I was looking at the, looking at the AB Forward materials and everything there, I was thinking how forward-looking are they? And it's interesting. You have the last 2 years we were flat, at least according to this data, assuming this data source is.
This is one data source.
I guess my question is are we being myopic? I guess, how are they evaluating the return and the sustainability metrics and things like that? If in 5 years it starts to swing the other way, is that an issue?
Some of this was discussed last Thursday at a Massachusetts Municipal Association meeting that was held in Boylston. I was there, Ellie was there, and so were a couple members of the school committee, and Alyssa Nickel and the town manager. So there was a delegation of about 6 people there from Acton, and There were a couple surprises that were presented during the meeting, one of which is state aid has not kept pace with state spending. So that was a sort of odd thing to discover. But they had several presentations, which I did not share with you last Thursday, on just schools and how that funding has shifted. There was a influx of money around COVID that then went away. And so you have, I'll share the data.
Oh, you can see when COVID hit, staffing jumped. See 2020, 2021? Staffing went up. What's that about? 20? To your point, Greg. Go ahead, Jason. I'm looking for, all right. So like Allison.
So I think Corinne was trying to speak, but I actually have a very simple formula. And the formula is if we can maintain, I'm assuming student-to-teacher ratio is something that's factored into the quality of the schools. Whatever metrics are used, like truly measuring the quality of education, if we can maintain those and close Conant or downsize in whatever way, then we'll do that. But the maintaining of the quality while cutting costs is crucial. But then I think I'd have to abstain from any vote because I'm a Conant parent. And so I feel like I would put, my love of the school and all nostalgia aside. If you maintain quality and you tear it down, I'm fine with that.
Corinne?
I had a couple things. One was the student-teacher ratio. That has gone, it's gone down a lot. Like, I think it was like 19 or something, 19 to 1, 18 to 1. If you go back to, like, at peak enrollment, which is at the 6054, and now it's like 13. Or maybe it went from 17 to 13. It's a big drop. There's a lot fewer students per teacher. The budget thing, what Greg said about, like, there was an influx of money from when COVID came in, but when the COVID money went away, the budgets didn't go down. So now we're absorbing it, right? Now everything's bigger now. Everything's more expensive. The cost per student has gone up much more. I'm not sure where you got that number, the cost per student, if you got it from that school digger thing or if you got it from the DESE website.
I've also, like, when we did the intern presentations, it's been a number that's been highly referenced. So I feel like it's a known number, but I was just surprised to see that it hasn't changed in a decade.
Yeah.
It has.
And
It's
I'm not
definitely changed. It's
Yeah.
definitely changed.
Okay.
We've got to get a better source for it. You definitely want to go to the school budget book.
Okay.
They call that out. And I know at least 2 years ago, I know the superintendent spent at least 20 minutes explaining in depth the comparable town comparisons of our per pupil spend.
Thank you, Jason.
And what I do for that is simply when I'm doing these numbers, because, as I dig into this stuff, that's what I did during the override stuff, is I just take whatever the total budget is and divide it by the total number of students. They are looking at sometimes different ways, like the foundation budget and how much, maybe by the town. They're doing different stuff, and I can never figure out how they're getting that number on DESE.
Yeah, again, I can't find the PowerPoint that was presented, but I'll get it from the MMA. But one of the drivers, and this is not just for Acton, but this is obviously right across the state, is there's supposed to be a circuit breaker for special education funding, and the state hasn't come near that. And so one of the cost drivers that throws student-teacher ratios off is which classroom are we talking about? And again, I'll get the data because I think the data speaks for itself, but the bottom line in terms of our point of view on this is data-driven decisions are the right way to go. And the 8 options that AB Forward is looking at, one of them is closing Conant, which is not a trivial decision in itself. Some of the middle options include going from 6 schools to 5 to maybe 3. And in order to do that, you take a building that now might have 2 schools, in one half of the Boardwalk School and another school on the other end, and make it 1. They're looking at moving 6th graders to junior high because there's vacancies, more vacancies at the junior high than at the elementary, particularly if they close Conant. They're looking at moving 8th graders to the senior high for the same reason. So if you just play out the scenarios that they're wrestling with, God bless them. They are not simple, they are not trivial. They're looking at fundamental things that this committee has urged town officials, not to mention school officials, to say, if you're gonna come in with a new budget, what were the options? So tonight we got 5 options. School committee is looking at 8.
So Scott, to answer your specific question, I think it would behoove us to let them present. Let's hear what they have to say, and let's not try and front run what they have to say. Give them the opportunity to give us their best presentation. If we find their presentation satisfactory, great. If we find their presentation is lacking, we can then follow up and say, these are the things we still don't understand. These are the things that we think you're not valuing properly.
Thank you. I'm happy with that conclusion. I just wanted to just talk about it as a committee because I want to make sure that we're being helpful to the process, and I wasn't certain what the best path was. Go ahead, Corinne.
I want to say something else about the ratings or the rankings, is that, there's Niche, there's U.S. News and World Report, Boston Magazine does one, they're all over the place. And I think they're kind of meaningless, because what we know is, even if we're number 1, we're still lower than we were 5 or 10 or 15 years ago. Test scores are like back to, nationwide, are back to where they were in like 92. Okay, so everything's going down. And so just throwing more money after it isn't necessarily a good thing. And just anecdotally, I'll say, like my oldest son, when he was in 6th grade, I was trying to find this online, I can't find it right now. The Douglas School, when my son was in 6th grade, had the highest MCAS scores in the state. And 5 years later, when my youngest was in 6th grade, they had the lowest in the district. I don't know where they are now, I haven't looked in a while. But I'm just saying, like, they make changes, they just keep on saying, we're number 1, we're the best, and meanwhile, the test scores are going down. And it said all these different rankings, as far as, like, I think, Fred, you said it, is, what's going into the ranking? Is it, their green stuff? Is it their diversity stuff? I think all we care about is, are our students doing well? Are they prepared? In this community, most people are concerned about their kids being prepared for college. So I think that has to be the ultimate thing. And to me, they've just been throwing good money after bad. And I know that they have state requirements, they have mandates, but they have to figure out something else. We can't keep having more and more teachers for fewer and fewer students.
All right, make it brief, Greg.
It'll be quick. One of the first things I did when I joined the Finance Committee is I asked some real estate people that I knew, because we were preparing for an override 2 years ago, how important schools were to the property values. And they said explicitly that the Boston Magazine ratings brought them more prospects to say, let's look at houses in Acton. And the quote that I was given by a real estate person, nobody moves here because it can be closer to a Trader Joe's.
All right, I'm going to move on. If you have one more comment, Fred, go ahead.
Yeah, one more comment. Like, in the materials, I guess upon what are they basing these, like this analysis, like assumptions for the next 5 years, 10 years on population growth, other things like this. Maybe I've missed it, I just haven't seen it. And so I'm not too sure, like, what are their baseline assumptions? And I think that's something we should understand and help.
I think we can ask that question.
Yeah.
When we can ask that question when we have the meeting with them.
Perfect.
Next one.
Yeah. All right, we're okay to move on? Noting the time where it is, I'm going to just talk through this quickly, and then I'd like to get some feedback, and then I'm going to have to do some work between now and the next meeting, but let me just give you some thoughts. Historically, when we've done the point of view, we usually say something positive to start, and I thought what we could do this year is we could highlight the work that the town does for getting grants. So I was thinking of showing the gross versus net for the towns and the school. And these numbers, the town manager provided for me. I have numbers from the school, but I didn't feel comfortable putting them in here without checking with them. So I think my thought is to speak to this and show the value that the town is doing and basically getting us 9% more value for our dollar effectively. I have a blank slide for the schools because I have some numbers, but I want to vet them and validate them first. Then I want to list the data points that are in the appendix, just to highlight things that we typically talk about and just reference them. I have a bunch of appendices that are in here. And then I was going to show like a slide on the, like, our projection based on the current ALG model. We kind of talked about that last week. This is the municipal debt. I got this from the town manager. I did have a couple questions on it, but I was putting this in today, so I didn't have time to ask him questions. But these numbers are accurate per the town manager. So there's two grids on this. So this is the town debt. I thought we would show town debt, school debt, and then have a slide on this topic, which I have not drafted or created, have a comment or a slide on the capital plan, and then guidance on said items, and then I have the appendices, which I can bounce through. But let me pause there and just get people's thoughts. Allison?
On the excluded debt slide, and I don't know if it's possible to do this, is there any way to depict how much of our taxes, go to those payments, and do the taxes actually go down once that debt is paid off? Or is all that theoretical? Like, is that?
You have to wait another 30 years to find out.
Okay.
So we might actually see a real-time version of this. So we all just received, within the last week, we received our preliminary Q2 bill. And I don't have the number, but I suspect the Q3 bill is going to be lower than the Q2 bill because we did not re-up a significant amount of excluded debt by avoiding the DPW building for at least a year. So it is possible, and this will be a real-time live exercise, especially as we get closer to town meeting. The Q3 and Q4 bills may be lower than the Q1 and Q2 bills because they were trying to anticipate re-upping a whole lot of capital debt that rolled off last year. So this could be very interesting. I can't wait to have to explain that one in public.
Any other thoughts on this approach out of the gate?
Just a question, what was GF? You said that one of the debt, maybe the next slide. Yeah, what is prior GF borrowing? What's GF?
General fund. General fund.
Yeah, I took exactly the way he wrote it in case I didn't interpret it properly. So this is a straight plagiarism, copy paste from town manager.
But in the interest of remembering that we have two audiences,
Yeah.
one audience, the select board's going to know what all that is. The rest, the other audience, the people in the public, we need to make sure that we write out the acronyms at least the first time through.
Correct.
I have looking at the slide on the left, between 26 and 27 just doesn't look right.
I have the spreadsheet.
No, I agree. It's all of a sudden you're seeing your principal go up, but your interest coming down. So if you have more principal outstanding, your interest payments, you have more outstanding as well. Because it's,
The issue I have is that I have the spreadsheet support for this, and I have questions on the spreadsheet support, so rather than try to interpret it myself, I just took what it is. I have to have some follow-up questions.
I don't see any orange,
well,
I only see two, principal and interest.
Yeah,
So I don't know what the compound interest is.
yeah, I'll ask the follow-up questions.
Thanks.
I wasn't going to be, what the heck? Is that plugged in?
Well, yeah, I think we'd have to look at the details, because like if higher interest is rolling off, or there's some sort of mix, you know, your interest payments could certainly go down if, depending on the mix of like the notes or what have you.
Sure.
Anyway, we'd have to look at that, but
I
it's
just
not
think
like
we
it
know
couldn't
that anything
happen.
we borrow now is going to be higher than what it was in the last couple of years, because
IT support.
interest rates have gone up. You know, so,
But the left-hand one's all prior, so I'm
yes,
assuming
it's
things are
prior,
rolling
it's prior,
off.
correct. I'm just thinking about when we borrowed for the schools. Jason, what was our school rate? Right around 2%?
I will get better.
2.13.
I'll get better, I'll get the weeds behind this better. I'll get the weeds behind it. Are there other thoughts or questions on this piece?
What's going into the, sorry, just for my probably basic question, the capital plan slide, what are we planning to cover?
Working on it.
Or what do we typically, maybe what do we typically cover there?
Help me with this one.
Usually on the capital plan slide, we talk about, we point out that the ask is always way more than we could possibly do. And so we try and figure out if there's a suggested number that we think they should be able to come in at. But this is also usually where we try and say that we favor or disfavor some of the plan of record of what the select board has identified as their goals for the year.
Thank you.
So considering the time that we have, I will email this deck around to people. What I did at the back of this in the appendix is I went to the state site and I grabbed a bunch of the pre-done slides with the metrics. So if there's, my arrows are floating. If there's anything in here that you think we should keep in the appendix, let me know for the next meeting. But I dumped everything that I thought was, had any value at all. And
what is that?
what is this?
Back up. No, there's what, that.
This is the assessment, this is the growth in tax dollars applied to the levy limit for the last 5 years.
That dot chart is going to,
It's colorful, right?
it's colorful, but it's just,
I said I dumped everything, so
I'd get
we
rid of
don't
it.
have to include this.
I would get rid of it, but
Well,
you keep the
you can
table on the left.
respond. You can respond directly to me in the email and say, we don't need this one.
We don't need this
But
dot plot.
what we typically reference,
Rorschach test.
we typically reference a lot of this information,
Right, sure.
like the average single family tax bill. So I picked up Middlesex, and we have Acton right there in upper rank. Since we're the A, we're on the first of the list on all of them. So instead of just having a bullet point, I thought we'd put in the appendix with the actual data so you can see comparable towns.
Yeah,
So-
the one thing on that one, the hard part is, on that tax bill, is that we don't know on those other towns like Arlington, what, they're gonna have a lower tax because they have more commercial. What's the percentage of commercial versus residential? And that's, I don't know if that's easily accessible in a chart. They could put it in there.
Unless there's an objection, I can go to Fred.
All right. Well, then I guess we'll adjourn for the night. Move to adjourn. Yeah, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
All right, the Finance Committee is adjourned.
Thank you.
That was abrupt. Okay.